Hey guys, Kevin against for Hannibal, Season 3, Episode 12. The number of the beast is 666. And obviously I was hyped up for this episode. This season has been on fire. It has been incredible. And especially because this was the penultimate episode, I didn't know what was going to happen. Obviously you're setting us up for the hopefully, probably amazing finale next week. I mean, the way this episode ends, I can't see how it's not going to be an amazing finale. But let's just get into this episode. It was incredible, and we have 2 episodes left of Hannibal ever. Hopefully someone picks it up. Hopefully. I hope there's not a cliffhanger next week, because I'm going to be really pissed off if there is. But this episode was amazing, and let's get into it. So, Will basically, after the attack on Molly, he keeps imagining the dragon killing Molly. But he's kind of imagining himself as the dragon, which I think is very interesting. So he talks to Bedelia, who he's still seeing, and he says he looks at his wife and he sees her dead, and basically it's as bad as Mrs. Leeds and Mrs. Jacoby were, lying where Molly should be. So obviously he's very worried that Molly's next and everything, and that's understandable. I mean, what happened? He basically kind of pictures himself doing this. And Bedelia asks if he sees himself killing her. He says yes over and over. And she says it's hard to predict when brittle materials will break. And she says Hannibal gave him 3 years to build a family confidence. And he will find a way to take it from him, and he has. And I thought that was really interesting because it's true. I mean, we saw Will in the beginning of this half of the season. He was very confident. He's a changed man. And now he's kind of getting back to his old ways in a way. And Will asks what he's going to take from her, and she asks if it's important to him that he does, and he says Hannibal has agency in the world, and she says Hannibal has no intention of seeing her dead by any other hand but his own, and I completely agree with that. I mean, Hannibal, obviously, he wants to be the one to kill Bedelia, and he wants to be the one to kill Will. We've known this from the beginning. And basically, only then, if he can eat her, he's in no position to eat her now. And she says it excites him to know he's marked in this particular way. And he asks why, and she asks why he thinks. He says it's Bluebeard's wife. Secret she is not to know, yet sworn to keep. And she says if she is Bluebeard's wife, she would have preferred to be the last. And Will asks if Hannibal is in love with him. Now, this is a very interesting question. I like that he asked this. And she asks if he daily could feel a stab of hunger for him and find nourishment at the very sight of him. And she says yes if he aches for him. And Hannibal says Will's thoughts are no, basically, she asks if he aches for him, if he kind of feels those same feelings for Hannibal, which I think is very interesting that she asked him that. So Hannibal says Will's thoughts are no more bound by fear of kindness than Milton's were by psychics, and he's brought free and damned to imagine everything. And Jack says now that he's imagined the worst, Hannibal says we are ducklings. We imprint on those ideas that grab our attention, and that's true, we really do. So Jack asks, what's God's attention? And basically, he says, God, the devil, and the great red dragon. Hannibal says to not forget the lamb. Will is the lamb of God. And Hannibal says he hides them from the wrath of the lamb. And Jack asks, who's us? And Hannibal says he means the 2 of them and the great red dragon. The lamb's wrath touches everyone who errs, and his retribution is even more deadly than the dragon's. And Hannibal says the lamb is becoming a lion. I kind of see what Hannibal's saying. I mean, Will seems like he has kind of like this inner demon building up inside of him. It's always seemed that way, and it's just waiting to come out. And I really feel like next week that's finally going to come out. I really do see that happening. So Jack says he'll still be standing. He asks if his conscience is clear, and Jack says it's as clear as his. And Hannibal says righteousness is what him and Will have in common. Jack realizes that Francis is not the dragon. Hannibal is the devil himself, bound in the pit, and Hannibal says that makes Jack God, and he says it does, and Hannibal says it's all God's demand sacrifices, and I thought that was really interesting. So then we see Francis. He sits in his attic. He looks at the painting, and it starts being ripped apart by blood, which I thought was really interesting. And we see Francis is probably his most menacing self in this episode. It was awesome to watch, and we'll get into that. But Will then says they don't have anything else. Jack says 8 people could be dead in a month, and they can't play the long game. They basically have to bait the dragon now, which, yeah, probably is the best thing to do. Especially knowing that he could go after Will's family again. I mean, who knows what could happen. And Jack says it was his decision, and Will says Jack is thrilled he didn't have to make it. And Alana says they once fooled themselves into believing they were in control of what was happening. She asks if he's still under that delusion, and Will then pictures Alana dead, which I think is really interesting, and says the dragon has a certain like he pictures these like black X's on her eyes. I mean, it was really creepy to see that, but he basically says the dragon has a certain abstract curiosity about him. He says all psychopaths are narcissists. They love to read about themselves, which is true. We saw the first scene we've seen in the show is Francis reading about Will and Hannibal, and then of course we saw him reading that article on the Tooth Fairy, and he tells Jack if he was smart, he would use Freddie Lowndes. And I knew she would come into the picture eventually, because obviously she had that scene with Will, and I knew someone was going to happen there, and I like that we saw her again in this episode. And Jack says she will need to interview Will and take his picture, and Will says he's in now and he can't go home as long as the dragon is loose. So he's basically bad-mouths the dragon in a title crime, which is the article that she's going to write, and he tells Jack to give him a shot at it, which I think is a really good idea. You know, basically just insult the dragon, basically lure the dragon to Will so they can capture him. It's a really well done idea, and Jack says it has to be a really good shot and how the setup is going to work, and Will says it has to be somewhere open, someplace where he can get close to him, somewhere that you know everyone would see it basically. And Alana says it feels like a trap to her, and it'll feel like a trap to him unless he has a professional voice to legitimize what he's saying, and he asks if she's volunteering, and she said no, she'd have to be a fool. So then we see Chilton, who I think gave the best performance of this character. You know, Raul Esparza killed it in this episode. Incredible. Just this whole episode, he was amazing. I mean, I've always really liked Chilton as a character, but especially this episode, he killed it. Honestly, I would love to see him get like a Emmy for like guest appearance or something. I don't know. He was incredible. So Chilton tells Hannibal, since his commitment, he has written some brilliant articles for the Northern Medical Journey of Psychiatry. He thanks him, and Chilton says he finished his most recent piece, and it was extraordinary, and it may be his favorite. And he says he's seen a lot of hostility. This was just bitchy. And he asks if he's his nemesis. He says no. He says he refuted his entire book, and he says it didn't hold up to scrutiny. And Chilton says he was lying on Hannibal's behalf to save his life. He refuted his insanity defense. He went on a limb for him, and he climbed up there and fought it off. And Hannibal says he didn't have the proper stuff, and Chilton says he's a best-selling author. The journals only still publish Hannibal's writing for the freak value of his byline, and he says the attention given to him is dwindling since he has been overshadowed by another creature. That book is writing itself. He says he will call it the Dragon Slayer. All he needs is an ending. And I like what Hannibal says, because it really does foreshadow what happens to Chilton. He says, fate is a habit of not letting us choose our own endings. That very much is true. I mean, what you think is going to happen is not necessarily what's going to happen. You know, things don't really go smooth. And Chilton says this is the ending fate has chosen for him. His tech and his strength will go, and no one will be afraid of him anymore. He says after Alana's reign, he will be out in the ward. The young ones will push him around, and basically how we saw him in Silence of the Lambs. If you remember in Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal's not in solitary confinement in Silence of the Lambs. He is out in this institution. Everyone's after him. You know, he's got all these crazy people, and he says they will use him for sex. All he will get to read is what he writes on the wall. And he says he has seen the old ones. They cry when they do not like the stewed apricots. And he says he will leave a copy of his book there for him. He has personalized it for Hannibal. And basically, I thought that was an awesome scene because it did two things. One, it gave Chilton an amazing performance. Two, it really shows what's going to happen to Hannibal in Silence of the Lambs, which I like they're setting up. So he walks down, sees Alana. He asks if she's there to tell him, I told you so. And she says that's not why she's there. And basically, Jack says that Freddie is there because they need someone who's less concerned about the truth than the best story. Chilton will lay out theories, and Will aggravate them for the record. And Freddie says he's making statements no investigator would ever make and no straight newspaper would credit. And Will says she's not a straight newspaper. She sells t-shirts that say the Tooth Fairy's a one-night stand. I thought that was really funny. And she says she can get him one if he wants. I mean, I love the interaction between Freddie and Will. The comedic relief that she brings is great. And she says they haven't been selling well since they started calling him the Dragon. And Chilton says Francis's objection to his nickname is likely grounded in the homosexual implication of the word fairy. And if they want to piss him off, that's what they need to call him, which I think is a really good idea because obviously they want to lure him to Will, and that's basically their plan. So Jack agrees, and Chilton sits down and tells Freddie about the Tooth Fairy's actions and motives while Will talks about the insults and talks about how, what's going on with him and everything. I thought it was definitely very interesting. And basically, she writes this all in the article. And then we see, after this, Jack says they need a picture of him in his hideaway. And Chilton agrees to be in it too. And Francis then sees the article that Freddie writes. And you think that this is going to go right. You think that he's going to go after Will. And we'll get into that. So Jack says the whole procedure is way too passive for his taste. They're playing games in the dark of the moon. And Will says he thinks he can do anything. Maybe he thinks he can stop. And it's true. I mean, he seems kind of unstoppable. The dragon definitely does. And Will says if he can hold off for them to catch him, they can help him stop. And Jack says he almost killed his wife and his son. And Will says this was Hannibal's doing. And they plan out how Will catch the dragon. Basically, their plan is as follows. They were going to presume that the dragon will attack Will near the fountain behind his home, where snipers and a SWAT team will be waiting. And that seems like a really good, well-executed plan. Something that will work very well. However, this completely backfires. We see Chilton complaining that Hannibal gave incorrect information about him in an article, and he's just being his self-centric self, and which I think is really funny. He's in his car. He's attacked by Francis right there, and Francis kills his armed guards and kidnaps him from a parking garage, and he brings Chilton back to his home where he strips him naked, glues him to a chair, and this scene was just awesome. Richard Armitage, again, like I've said, he is killing it as the dragon, and especially in this episode, because at this point, he is fully transformed. The Francis that we've seen, gone completely, because now he is possessed by the dragon, and I love it. So when Chilton wakes, he doesn't immediately understand what's happened, but after the dragon quotes the Tattle Crime article back to me, he knows how much trouble he's in. And the dragon doesn't want to hurt Chilton, though, merely show him the truth about what he's become. That's really what he wants to do. And Chilton pleads to be let go, explaining that he hasn't seen the dragon's face and is therefore not a threat to him. But the dragon removes that option when he takes off his mesh mask and forces Chilton to look him in the eye. And I mean, it gets really intense here. This scene was awesome. But then Reba arrives, which pauses their negotiation, and the dragon warns that if Chilton says anything, he'll kill her, basically. And Reba literally comes face to face with Chilton, and luckily he remains quiet. So she basically came to tell the dragon that she's not just there to bring him soup. She's there because she wants to know how much she cares about him, and that she hopes he'll reconsider ending their relationship. But the dragon doesn't budge, and you can tell that, again, he just doesn't care at this point because he's possessed, and he doesn't really have that love for Reba anymore because the dragon's taken over. It's no longer Francis. It's completely the dragon now, and I really like seeing this. So, basically, after she's gone, he goes right back to what he was going to do, and he shows Chilton a slideshow featuring the William Blake painting and photos of his victims before and after their deaths. It's really gruesome stuff. I mean, Chilton plays along, saying that he understands the dragon now and blames Will for the lies written in the article, basically to cover his own ass, to protect himself, because he has no idea what's going to happen to him. And I was wondering if Chilton was going along with their plan and was trying to figure out what was going on here. I couldn't really figure out if, they were trying to plan something out. I didn't know what was going to happen in this scene. I mean, this scene, I was just on the edge of my seat, and I loved it. I will say I did find the home invasion scene a lot more intense, but this was still awesome. So, the dragon has Chilton to do one more thing before he lets him go, to record a video message, but after he records it, he decides to basically, he wasn't going to kill Chilton before, but basically to ensure that Chilton probably understands the red dragon, Francis then takes his mask off, and he puts on his sharpened teeth. I'm like, oh shit, he's going to kill him. He bites off Chilton's lips, and it's as disgusting as you can imagine, but it was an awesome scene. I definitely really like seeing that. So we pretty much think that he killed Chilton and everything. We'll get into that. So the lips are delivered to Hannibal soon after in an envelope brought to Hannibal's cell by Alana. And he asks to open it privately, and she says he may not. He says Chilton often offended him, so he understands the sentiment. And by the time that Jack arrives, Hannibal has already eaten one of the lips, and basically they tell Hannibal of their plan, and Hannibal claims the same thing would have happened to them, and that they set up Chilton's demise. And I kind of agree with Hannibal. I mean, if they would have done the same thing with Will, he probably would have done the same thing. I mean, he's just that smart, and he's a genius, honestly. I mean, that really is how the dragon is. And we don't know if Hannibal, like, told the dragon to do this, which he very well could have. But the thing is, how would Hannibal have done that? Because he can't call him on the phone anymore, obviously. So the video message Chilton recorded reaches Jack, Will, and Alana shortly after, and in it, Chilton repeats the dragon's words and confesses that he lied for Will, and he also promises that the dragon will snap Will's spine, and basically he's not done with him. So they know that the dragon is still coming after Will, and that's obviously not good. So basically they made things even worse. That's what happened here. Now, I really love this scene between Bedelia and Will, because I thought this was definitely very interesting what she's saying. It kind of seems like we've been going to this point with Will's character, and now that she's brought it up, I think it's very interesting. So Bedelia asks if Will wants to talk about what happened to Chilton, and he says the divine punishment of a sinner mirrors the divine sin being punished. And Bedelia says it's contrapposto, you play, you pay. And Will says Chilton was not recognized till his article on Hannibal the Cannibal. He wanted the world to know his face, and now he doesn't have one. And Bedelia says they are making their way through the inferno, Dante's pilgrims, and he says they're not pilgrims, they're pets. The Great Red Dragon kills pets, and that very much is true. I mean, pretty much everyone, the Great Red Dragon is more powerful than them. That's just how he is. And he's this powerful being, and she says he put his hand on his shoulder in the photograph to establish that he really told him those insults about the dragon, or maybe now that's what he thinks, but she says maybe he wanted to put him at risk just a little, and she asks if he has to wonder, and he says no. She asks what he thinks the Great Red Dragon would do, and she says he was curious what would happen, and she asks if this is what he was expecting, and he says he can't. He's surprised, and I thought that was really interesting. I don't think Will was thinking that, but in the back of his mind, maybe he was thinking, you know what, to cover my own ass, why not take Chilton? You know, I kind of feel like that's what Will was doing there, and basically he says that makes him a participant, not an observer, and I thought that was really interesting. And then she tells him that Hannibal Lecter does have agency in the world, despite being locked away, and she tells him that he has Will, and I thought that was definitely a very interesting scene. So when Jack and Will next see Chilton, he has survived being set on fire, very much like how Will pretended to kill Freddy, and I thought that was very interesting. Now, Will says that this was Hannibal that told him to do that, basically to... I don't exactly know what Hannibal's motive was, but Jack asks if he's okay, and Will says he is because he had the SWAT team, and Jack says that Chilton said his name when they brought him into the ER. He's trashed, and he tells Will to get ready. They go into the hospital room to see him, and this scene I love, because Will says he's sorry this happened to him, and Chilton has, like, a muffled voice now. He's like, you tet me up, like, you can barely understand what he's saying. But what I like in this scene is that Will is telling Jack, Will can understand exactly what he's saying, and he translates to Jack what he's saying, which I thought was really interesting. So Chilton says he set him up, and he knew it. He put his hand on him in the picture like a pet, and Will tells Jack what he's saying, and Will asks if he saw anything, and Chilton says he saw a black woman, and she's blind, and Jack realizes right away he's talking about Reba, and I knew that somehow that was going to come into play. When Hannibal said they're listening, and, you know, they want Hannibal to keep Francis on the line, I knew that someone was going to have him with that. So basically, he knows this because the dragon, of course, mentioned her on the phone with Hannibal, but before they can close in and, you know, start anything, he then kidnaps Reba and brings her back to his home. And I thought the scene was just insane, especially because, one, Reba's blind, two, she has no idea what's going on. So she, of course, is terrified. She says she never meant to hurt him. She says to forget about all of it and just have a good time and be friends. And he tells her to shut up. He doesn't want to hear about it. And, you know, she's trying to do whatever she can to break free and just move on. But, of course, he's completely gone. She doesn't realize that caring heart that Francis had, that loving the love that he had for her, it's completely gone because now the dragon's taken over. And the dragon asks if she knows about the murders in Buffalo and Chicago, which he characterizes as remarkable events featuring two groups of people that were changed. And when Reba puts it together, he asks her what that being visited them was called, and she doesn't know what he's talking about at first, and he says, it's all over the news, and she basically says the tooth fairy, but he shuts her up before she can say that, and he asks her to try again, and she says the dragon she says dragon something, and then he says that he and the dragon, that he is the great red dragon, and that's how the episode ends. And that was awesome. That ending was awesome. I cannot wait for next week's finale. I cannot believe next week is a season finale, a series finale, unless there is a season 4, which I doubt there's going to be at this point. I just hope that next week's finale, they don't leave us on a cliffhanger. That's really what I'm hoping. As I said before, I'm fine that the show is ending because the Great Red Dragon arc kind of closes Will's arc in the show. But I do feel that I just want closure. I don't want it to just feel weird. You know how Digestivo was, where it gave us that really good closure? That's what I want this to be. I want really good closure, and I want it to feel like it was a series finale, which they did last season, and they did with Digestivo, so I hope they do it with this too. But let's get more into what's going to happen next week. Are they going to be able to catch the dragon? At this point, I don't know, because he seems unstoppable. I mean, it seems like he has this plan that is completely just avoids anything they're trying to do, and he knows that they're after him, so he's doing whatever he can to make sure they stay away from him, and I think it's really smart what the dragon is doing. And is Francis going to be able to break free from the dragon? I don't know. I feel the only way for the dragon to die is for Francis to kill him, really. We'll have to see what happens with that. Let's talk about Hannibal, because obviously Hannibal, I feel, also is the only thing that could really stop the dragon and help him out. I mean, it's really interesting, the relation between Hannibal and the dragon. Do you feel that Will has this love for Hannibal that Bedelia suggests? Because I think it's very interesting what she brought up, and definitely you can tell that Will is kind of afraid he's going to become like Francis, and I find that very interesting, definitely, which I like seeing. Now, Chilton is alive, but are we going to see him again? I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see Chilton again. I hope we do, but I don't know if we will. How exactly is this going to... Reba, I think, is going to get killed. I don't see Reba living, because obviously we know the dragon wants to kill her, so I don't see Reba living next week. Unfortunately, I wish I could say she's going to live, but I don't really see that being likely. I don't really see that happening, so we'll have to see what ends up happening. With that, that's going to be very interesting. Is Hannibal going to be released from solitary confinement and basically do what happened, what Chilton says? Is he going to go out with all these crazy people? I mean, it could definitely happen. So, again, like I said, I feel like they're really trying to set up Silence of the Lambs. I know they don't have the rights to it, but I think they're at least going to get us to that point. That's really what I feel like they're trying to do there, which I think is really cool if they're doing that. I know Brian Fuller had other plans for this show, but the show's ending, so I don't know if that's really going to work. I don't know if he had to change something. I just really want closure. I don't want a cliffhanger that never gets solved. I don't want... What's an example of a show that had a cliffhanger? Let me think. I don't want a Dexter. I don't want a Dexter where he becomes a lumberjack. I really don't want something like that. That'd be really stupid. I'm trying to think about other shows that were... I don't want a Witches of East End. That's what I don't want. I don't want a Witches of East End where you have this awesome cliffhanger, but then it got canceled. Because the show got canceled as early as it did, I hope that they have some kind of closure to the show. That's all I want. I just want closure. That's really what it comes down to. But this was an amazing episode, as usual. Loving this season. Cannot wait for the finale next week. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be crazy, and I can't wait to see what ends up happening with that. But that's basically my review. Hope you guys enjoy that. I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for the series premiere of Fear the Walking Dead, which I am hyped up for, obviously, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.